Hey guys, what's up? Welcome everybody into episode number 3, I guess, of Overdrive featuring Nick Reich. Just a reminder, this is a audio only show, so if you're seeing this on YouTube, crank the volume up, catch the conversation between me and Nick. Today we're going to review round number 5 from Fiddler's Bend in Oklahoma. Nick is going into great detail on his runs and some of the technical aspects of the machine and some things that went on out there in Oklahoma. So, guys, stay tuned. Here you go. Let's jump right into the conversation with me and Nick. Race number 5 from the NRRA recap starts now.
It was a good day. It was a good day for everybody. Nobody had any real serious, terrible damage.
It looked. I like it. If he's going to run back to back like that, I like that he throws in one that's not crazy.
Yeah,
You know. Uh,
it made everybody's always worried about that when you run them so hard. It's already hard enough to maintain the cars, and then you go somewhere and it's some extreme thing where you're going to put a huge beat down on your vehicle.
yeah.
So, but it was good. It really was. It was cool because a lot a bunch of people stepped up and actually ran both classes just because like, hey, we're not going to destroy our car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
When Braden texted me last night, he said, I'm running tomorrow. I was like, oh no. Because we've been trying to get him to run Bounty all year. Of course, he's just new car, a little nervous. And he texted me last night. And he's like, I'm going to run Bounty tomorrow. And I'm like, well, it can't be too bad.
yeah, no, it was, and it was still. I mean, it was still a ton of fun and exciting and all that. But yeah, I don't know.
No.
Um, what else? What should I tell you? I should tell you. My steering. I didn't have any problems with my steering, and that was amazing. That was that was what we, you know, what stressed myself out over getting fixed this week. So that worked amazing. Made me super comfortable, and I was able to drive the machine, and that was a big relief as well. So I'm real happy with that. We put our new intake and hat. It's a big old aluminum place to fit that big 4500 manifold on,
Yeah.
and we switched that because way back a couple months ago when we were doing all kinds of wheel dyno tuning, we found out that at high RPM, basically starting at like 5500 and up, that the motor, they call it sucking mercury, but it had a little bit of vacuum, and that means that it wasn't getting all of the air that the motor needed. And we attributed that to the style air cleaner we were running, because when we pulled it off, uh, we made more power. So so this has been a plan for a long time, just not something that you could just easily get. So we finally got it, got the intake, had the time to put it on, and we did that. Well, something weird that happened is it was like acting like it was running rich, and I couldn't figure out why, but that's not a big deal in my world. I have sets of plugs with me, and I threw a new set of plugs in, and that was that. Well, when I drove it down to the race course, when you touch the throttle, it just wasn't right on it. Normally, it's almost like electricity fast,
Yeah.
how quick it revs and everything, and it just wasn't. It reminded me of my first motor. It was just kind of slow. So with that, I mean, it was what it is. When I got up there, I cleaned it out and took off and raced the first race course, and didn't there was no drawback or nothing that held me back there. And then second race course, that was a little different. They had some, I think they had to move a camera or something, and I was the first one on the line. So I'd already warmed the buggy up, and I drove it around, and then I sat and waited at the start line there, and then I started it up, and I mean I must have sat there for 5 minutes, and the buggy actually started getting warm, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll shut it off. I just shut it off, and I turned the switch back on, let the fans run to cool down. Well, when Knox at the starting line told me to start it back up again, I started it back up again. And I was touching the throttle, and I could tell that, God dang it, this this thing is loading up on me. So I cleaned it out a couple times and thought I was good. Well, as soon as I took off, it stuttered a bit when I took off, and that did affect me negatively in my going through the jumps. And then as soon as I got through the first little singles there, or doubles, or whatever you'd call them, I stabbed the gas, and it was like a 1.5-second delay. And it actually screwed me up because I was planning on drifting around the corner to be lined up, and I had to drive around and actually touch my rear steer. And then that's when it lit back up right at the bottom of the hill, which was perfect, and jumped up the hill. And when I landed and threw it in the first, it stuttered again. And then after that, I just kept it first, and I kept it kind of revved up, and I never had no problems. But on that second course, just because of that stuttering, you know, I left the second, or probably realistically just a second or 1.5 seconds. It was not nothing extreme that was a, you know, oh my God, I would have won easily if this wouldn't have happened. It was nothing like that. It just was, it basically was just annoying. So I already figured it out after talking with my tuner and everything, and they don't even believe that it was a tuning issue. My air temp sensor that goes into the bottom of that new manifold, that new intake that we put on, the cap was gone on that, and we all had noticed it. They pointed it out to me, but it had just been like that. But that's not normal. There's supposed to be a cap on that sensor. So they're wondering if somehow when we made the switch from one sensor, when we pulled it out of the one to the other, that cap came off, and now that's reading incorrectly. So we're just gonna, you know, we got 2 sensors coming, and we'll put that on and put a new set of plugs in, and good chance that should solve that issue, and that'll be no more issue.
That yeah, as a layman watching on the live feed, I never would have noticed that. So let's back up just a little bit. You talked
Sure.
about the steering, and so you done some work to the buggy over the week. What exactly did you end up doing?
Oh, so I went over. Yeah, maybe I never got to tell you much about this, but we went over to my engine builder's house. My engine builder, he's not only an engine builder, his name's Andy Olson, and he's an extremely smart individual and extremely skilled with basically all problem solving. So his main job in his life is he is like a do-it-all guy, like the guy they call in for Excel Energy to solve problems that others can, you know, that nobody else can solve. So he has like a full shop with machining equipment. He has everything, and then he basically has a miniature version of that at home, and he builds these award-winning pulling truck motors for everybody all across the state of Wisconsin, and then race motors for me and a bunch of other people in drag racing and stuff. Well, anyway, I take my stuff over there because I've been wanting to build some new bracketry to be able to tighten my belt at a better angle, because the way my belt was getting tightened before is the rod that holds it was going at an angle, and it needed to go straight. When it went at an angle, it would actually put tension on my alternator and try and twist my alternator, which we all know that's not good. We want everything to be straight and put equal force on everything. So we did that, and I got a couple pulleys from Tim Bacon from 40 Spline, and I also wanted to install these pulleys so there was more wrap on my power steering, or my hydraulic steering pump. I only had about 40% wrap on it, and when to put these pulleys on, we would get like 65% wrap on it. So all this stuff, you know, this required like machining, because these pulleys have to sit flat and they have to be aligned and everything else. Well, we took it over there, what I thought we were going to do is I thought we were going to put a plan together, and my guy Andy there, instead of putting a plan together, well, Andy just started disassembling, and we got dug in. I mean, he just went right to machining parts. Well, the great thing about it is after a day and a half of basically no sleep, we were able to get it all put back together and it worked, but it almost killed me in the meantime with stress because I took it over there with the intention of, okay, we're gonna get some eyes on this, we're gonna put a plan together. And after this race, the one I was racing, after this race, I got time off, and and we have local races, and I'm like, we got all the time in the world, and I don't have to be stressed about nothing. Well, it didn't work out like that. Andy's a madman. He just went at it and started, and we were already too deep into it for me to say no by the time that I realized what we had gotten into. So he got it all together. He got it all fixed, but pulleys, extra brackety, realigning and machining spacers and actually machining some off of the alternator itself and the way it grabs, rebuilding a bracket that mounts onto the front of the crane, the chain case, the timing gear set, all that stuff basically in a day and a half we did, and I survived and made it to work and then all that. So we got all that fixed up, and that solved the steering issue tremendously. In fact, we actually, for the first time ever, we actually put a belt on it, over tightened the belt, and shredded a belt from being over tightened. It actually tore on each side of only the center of the belt was left. So that's good. We now know we have the most extreme setup, and we don't have to tighten the belt so tight, and we're good. We should be good to go.
So yeah, they'd mentioned it on the live feed, and maybe you'd mentioned it on your socials throughout the week, but I wasn't exactly sure what had happened. But so by the looks of these courses, this was definitely one of those. While it wasn't like extreme as far as rock faces and jumping up big boulders and whatnot, this definitely looked like one of the courses that you really wanted good steering.
Yeah.
It
So
looked very tight.
it was, and I had a pretty big advantage because of racing at Outlaw. This was a very, very similar course to an Outlaw course, like very similar. So, I mean, exactly what we do on a regular basis with Outlaw. This was that. So I felt I was more than confident with it, and because of my steering, I was full of confidence. I haven't had enough time to figure out what I screwed up on course one when I came down the hill. I came down the hill. I mean, I had just a smoke and run going, and I came down the hill, and I thought that I actually did something wrong with my steering, or the way maybe I carried my momentum into the corner, and that's what attributed it stood right up, and it was gonna tip right over. And but I watched a couple videos, and I honestly don't even know that what I still can't figure out if what I screwed up to make that happen. So I was gonna kind of do some more research on that, and check my sway bar and make sure it isn't broke. I don't really, nothing looked visually wrong, on the machine on a walk around, but I definitely stood it right up on two wheels, and man, I sat there and waited for that thing to come down, and it just kept going. It kept going and going and going, and I was like, you're not gonna let me keep going. So I had to turn right and tap the gas and set it down, and then back up and take off. And I mean, I don't know how many seconds that killed, but that took me from being that right there just took you. That took my first place away. That took away everything. So I really want to figure that out. Is that I want to know if I got to be mad at myself and try a little harder, or if I want to, if there's a part that let me down there.
That turn, you're not the only one that was victim to that turn. There was a few UTVs and some other guys that had some trouble right there. It just looked very tight. So that was what I was going to ask you about. Was so I just watched the Charles with High Octane just put out a video of your runs and had some in car,
Yep.
and I do not, nor will I ever probably understand how you guys are capable of driving at those speeds with basically one hand on the wheel. you've got one hand on the steering wheel and one hand over here with controlling the rear steer. And I was watching that and I was just like, holy cow, I don't even understand how you saved that in that moment.
Well, I don't know. That's just how I've become comfortable with. I have learned a couple drawbacks of driving one hand down hills. Is when you drive one hand downhill, I try my hardest to switch to two hands when I go down hills. And why that is because when I'm going downhill with one hand, the weight of your one hand in the center of the wheel, if you're turning slightly and take a big hit, the weight of your arm yanks the steering wheel. And that has got me a couple times. So I've trained myself to try, and when I'm going downhill, I always try and switch to two hands. Flat ground and uphills, one hand's just fine. I've never noticed or seen on videos where I've took big hits and that has affected me. And I think that's maybe I'm putting more strength into the steering wheel. I don't really know how that works. I guess I haven't studied that enough to figure that out, but I know I've seen it a couple different times where I've been flying downhill and took a hit, and literally my arm jerked the steering wheel to the left, and then I had to, I either ricocheted off something or went off course or something like that.
Yeah, I noticed that exact what you were talking about in those in cars. As soon as you got it pointed in the direction you wanted downhill, it was both hands all the way down and then back to the rear.
And I'm trying right now. I'm just relying on habit, but I do try and remind myself, of it because I can't remember where, but there was a particular race where it cost me dearly, just that all by itself. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't know that everybody drives like I do. It's just what's comfortable. And another trick that I learned that really, really helps a lot is running a smaller steering wheel. And I stole that idea from Timmy. Timmy, I always noticed he always had a small steering wheel. And we have very fat, our orbitals that we run. You guys run orbitals, right? All hydraulic steering.
We do not. We're poor. I'm still in the electronic power steering world, but most of the UTVs do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a little bit of info about orbitals is an orbital is basically it's a hydraulically controlled gearbox, and you can get them in all different sizes. And I'm just using this. It's really not a gearbox. It's all hydraulics and different size orifices in there. But what it is you can get them in, let's say you can get them in 150 to 175 to 200, all the way to I think 350. And the higher the number, the less turns it takes in your steering wheel to turn your tires. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we're already running, and there's more to it. The higher the number, the more heat you build because you're creating friction, and of course more power it takes of a pump to push all that.
Yeah.
So the sweet spot that I found, and I've kind of pushed others to, is that 250cc orbital. That feels like the sweet spot, and then I can run a really large ram. I don't remember the diameter of my ram, but if you look, it's larger than I'd say about 50% of the guys. And why that is just for strength. Your hydraulic ram in the front, it's like a battering ram, and I don't want a small one that I can bend easily. And it takes a lot of pump power, and it takes a lot of hydraulic fluid to move that big one fast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a combination of everything: your pump, your ram, your orbital, all that stuff. But more or less, that orbital being at a 250, and then I'm able to downsize to a small steering wheel, and then I put some big ribs on my steering wheel, and that way I have a big grip. My hand can't slip on it very, very easily, and I'm able to turn that thing. If I go, I think lock to lock, if my hand's in the center, I think it's 3/4 of a rotation. So if I run my top hand, if I run it all the way to the bottom, I only have 25% more turn of the steering wheel, and it's locked out, which that's rare for me having to do that. So I can get real good range of motion with one hand each way.
Yes.
Where it gets really tricky is high speed, and all you gotta do is just remind yourself. So you get in that 50, 60 mile an hour range, and you need both hands to hold the steering wheel steady. You can't make sharp movements because the wheels turn so fast.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the theory behind all that. That small steering wheel, that helps if you have hydraulic steering and quick enough steering, and you can drive with one hand. You can make corrections and save yourself when a lot of other people can't save themselves just for the fact that they can't steer fast enough.
That makes, I mean, total sense. And I had noticed in the past, years ago, oh gosh, this is probably 2016, 17, when I first really started getting involved. I always noticed that Timmy had a really small steering wheel. And I was like, I do not know how. Of course,
And
me never
go
have
ahead.
driven one. I didn't understand that at the time.
And I want to make it really clear, like, I don't know all this stuff for a fact. This is just my opinion. So I just noticed Timmy had it, and I'd asked him about it a couple times, and if I remember correctly, what he straight up told me is maybe like that he's just always had one. He had one steering wheel that I think went with him through every buggy. He always kept that same steering wheel. It's like his good luck charm or something like that, but it's small. And I mean, I don't know. And then I was always looking for faster steering, and I can actually remember watching Jake Pike run, and I specifically remember watching him and Timmy run, and that was the one thing that I could pick out that set them two apart from everybody, is how fast their front wheels would turn. And theirs was always significantly faster than everybody else's, significantly. And those guys, it seemed like they'd always pull off the just stuff that you would think was impossible. They'd throw themselves up or donkey kick, and somehow they were always able to steer out of it when everybody else would be cartwheeling and rolling.
Well, this leads me into my next question. On run two, you started. I think you were the first one, wasn't you?
Yes, sir.
And put down a smoking lap. But I noticed you did something a little different there that I don't think anybody else did. When you come around the bottom corner and started up the ledge, everybody was going right. You went left. Was that a planned move, or is that this is the way I'm pointing, this is where I'm going?
Yes, sir. That was planned right from the very beginning. So when we got to the park there, and I was on Friday and I walked the hills. Well, the line was to the right. The line was to the right the whole time. But everybody came down. All kinds of people came down there with pre-run, and it's probably the most people I've ever seen pre-run. And I just walked the course, but everybody had run that right side so much that instead they took away the ramp. The ramp actually went away, and it actually became a wall. So you would go up to it, and you know how a lot of the climbs end up being like a gradual and then into a flat spot?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what that turned into. And though that's just fine, all that happened, my opinion is that everybody got comfortable with that line, and they were happy with it, and that's what made their decision to go that way. If you watch me on the first course, where I still went to the right side, I didn't go way over to the right. I was actually to the left a little bit, because to me the idea was if I'm going to run into a bump, I want to line myself up where I wanted to go up on the second hill anyway. And then of course I was way outside when I went around that corner and went up on two wheels. But the original plan was to go far left the first course and the second course. The second course, when I went far left, if you watch that, I mean, I went up that so fast and my tires never left the ground.
Yeah.
And that was the goal. And then the second course, on the second hill, when I hit that, I missed my line on that. I wanted to hit the exact same spot that I hit on the first course, but that was only about a 6-inch wide area that I needed to hit with my left tire. Well, I missed that by almost a foot. And, you know, I ain't going to stop and go, or back up to hit it or take my, you know, I'm not doing that. I know I could go up it. So I just nailed it, and I knew I'd go up it. And that didn't go as planned. That, though it didn't look bad on the video, I felt like I spent a lot of time in the air, and that was not the intention. But it all worked out. It worked out. I'm excited to do what I normally do and see if it was faster than everybody else's. You know, compare side by sides and see all that. But I was real happy with everything. My second run, them bobbles in the beginning, that, like I said, that annoyed me there with the sputtering. And other than that, I was happy with everything. If I would have preferred to hit my line on that second hill. And but when it was all said and done, when I came off, I knew I didn't leave. You know, I didn't leave 5 or 6 seconds on the track. I knew that you'd have to have a pretty good run to compete with that. And Wade did. He did have a good run. I mean, it was flawless. It looked perfect. I believe everything that he wanted to do, he did. So it worked out good for him.
Yeah, it was man, but both runs, everybody was just so close. You had to be so on it. I think the second run there was something like 6 or 7 people in the 47-second range,
Yeah.
like just
Yep.
on top of each other. Just a good fast course. Like I said, I mean, he's done this. We've had a couple back to backs. We don't have it often, but typically when we do, there's one that's a little rough, and then one that's a little tamer. Um, National Rock's got a few weeks off now. We don't come back until the end of June in West Virginia, but you do have some outlaw events and some other events coming up here.
Yep. This coming weekend, our club that we're in, we put on the shootout. It's in Neillsville, Wisconsin. So that's a pretty big race. Sometimes we've had up to 30 bouncers there, and tough trucks and side by side racing. Real decent payout. It pays all the way down. I don't know what we're paying down to this year, but we try and pay quite a ways down. Like in the past, we paid down to 10th place. Our payouts are based on our crowd. The least amount of crowd we've ever had is 800, so our payouts have always been large, thousands of dollars. So yeah, we're looking forward to that, and that's the race this coming weekend.
When's your next outlaw race? Do you know offhand?
That would be, I believe, the weekend after, and that's at Fritz's Sugar Creek.
Oh, you're coming back to Kentucky.
Yeah, so I don't think I have a weekend off for a while. I want to say 4 weeks, 4 weeks until I have an actual weekend off, or maybe it's 5 weeks. I don't know, but it's just going to be constant here for a little while.
Well, that's good for us. That means we got plenty to talk about.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. I won't keep you long tonight. I appreciate you calling in and giving us a little recap. Third place finish, which would be the third week in a row.
Yes, sir. Third week in a row, drawing number 2 start. You know, the number 2 for the starting lineup, and then third week in a row for a third place.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
No.
Man, hey, it could be a whole lot worse. Hopefully, we got to get you on the top step here sometime this season. I look forward to, and I always do. Man, I love West Virginia. I know you hate it; it's a drive, but listen, we got to get you up that hill and get you on the top box over at West Virginia. That place is
Oh
so
yeah.
gnarly. Such a beautiful place. But
Oh, something else I wanted to tell you about here quick before
yeah,
we
go ahead.
go is uh, I think it's really neat if you watch Brandon Davis run, the way his machine handled the course. It was his suspension is just unbelievable the way that machine works. Though the length of the car and the size of it, that was something that hurt him on this particular course. His suspension just shined on everything on this course. Everything he hit, I don't believe his tires came off the ground. It was just amazing.
That machine works very well, and it gets. Of course, it's always worked well, but it seems like the more. And I'm assuming that they're constantly shock tuning and things like that, but it seems like it gets better as the more he drives it. And
Oh
I,
yeah.
I asked him this a year or two ago. I said, Brandon, I assumed we all assumed when Timmy sold whatever the next buggy was after that you would end up with that because he had been going through and getting, Timmy would run one a year, Brandon would get it.
Yep.
And I asked him, I said, why didn't you get, the next buggy? He's like, dude, I don't need another one. This is the one. He's like, this is the best machine I've ever driven. Why do I don't want to start over. He's like, I love it.
Yep.
So, yeah. Brandon had a rough weekend last week, so it was it's good to see him do pretty good this weekend. But yeah, that machine just flat works. And
Oh yeah.
anywho, brother, we'll let you slide, and appreciate you. Like I said, appreciate you calling in, and we're getting good feedback on the show. Everybody likes hearing from
Good.
you. Had a lot of comments. And so, guys, if you've made it this far, make sure and hit that subscribe button. That way, you'll get notifications whenever the shows come available. Appreciate everybody, and don't forget, go find Nick on social media. Fordzilla Behind Bars Racing. He's on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. Go hit him up, and if you can catch a race, guys, come see a race in person. If you've never been to one, your mind will be absolutely blown at what these machines, what these drivers can do. Nick, until next week, buddy. Have a good trip
You
home.
bet. Appreciate you and all you do. Appreciate everybody listening. Thank
Right
you.
on. Thank you, bud.
Bye bye.